Welcome to another Customer Success Office Hours, our informal bi-weekly session where we just kind of answer questions or tool around, show off some new features, talk about some new stuff. A lot more unstructured. Today, Paige Clapper is joining. Well, I guess it's Paige Schmidt now, or
Yeah, I
yeah.
actually am going through the formal process of changing my name, which is very difficult.
Are you? So is your email address going to change then as well, or are you going to keep
Yeah,
the?
well, it's like you got to do Social Security, then you have to go to the DMV, then you got to do your passport, and then you do your credit cards, IRS, and work.
Well, see, this is where another one of those circumstances where I'm kind of glad I'm a man.
Yeah.
Um, not
Well,
not
men have to change their names sometimes too.
It's true. Actually, I've heard, and I was completely off topic, but I've actually heard it's tougher for a man to change their name because there used to be a policy where you had to put like an ad in the paper or something
What?
to say you're changing your name because I mean a lot of this goes back to ye olden days where you know
Oh, like
it's,
if you owed anyone anything or
yeah,
something?
like yeah,
Yeah,
more was tied to the man's name, I guess, but you know, not
yeah.
like anything is ever meant by the Vandenbeld name is not a very prestigious one. That's what I.
It sounds fancy.
It does. It does. But that's where it kind of ends. We also have a late joiner here coming in, Persona, who's can't talk yet, but he'll join it. So Paige is on with us. Persona's coming in. Paige's dog is now on Instagram.
Oh
For
yeah,
anybody that also wants to toss a, is it a follow on Instagram? I guess is it?
yeah.
Okay,
Give her a follow at Picksticks11, I think it is.
there we go. So again, we're talking about the important stuff here on the
She's the
office hours.
resident VMware dog.
That is true. I do enjoy seeing Pixel whenever I go to the office, which is not that common anymore, but hopefully soon. Again, I was there a couple weeks ago for some internal meetings. So we're discussing a little bit things a little bit earlier here, and Paige had mentioned that there is some updates coming to the App Defense offering. So, Paige, do you want to maybe cover that off real quick and talk about that a
Yeah.
little?
So I think we have a big release and a small release as is typical. So our smaller release is coming next week. And I don't know if the videos have saved from earlier when I demoed everything, but essentially
So
what
just a quick point, right there to interrupt you. So everything that we've done is up on our YouTube page.
okay.
Also, another just putting out there, we're like 15 follows away from actually having a custom URL. So if you're out there and like the videos, please just follow. I'm not trying to do this for publicity. It's just I feel it'll be a lot easier to tell someone to go to YouTube/VMware Cloud as opposed to EG capital F.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Just
Continue.
the
But
YouTube.
yes, everything is
Yeah.
up on our
So
YouTube page, and the links are at the bottom of the Twitch page. So
I
to come
think
back.
that people who are interested in app defense can go look at one of those old videos. And when the new release comes out, which is supposed to be for later next week, in which case, in like two more of these sessions, because they're normally on Tuesday, I can show the new UI. But essentially, the app defense business unit is starting to revamp the user interface because app defense gives you so much information. It's hard for people to digest it, especially if they're not a part of the security team. So they're building in a lot of intelligent features that basically will let you know if what the IP reputation of everything is and sort of spot through all the behaviors and processes which ones are bad, and put it on a really nice easy to look at dashboard. So that's like my favorite thing that's coming next week, especially because I have to look at the dashboard every day and sort of explain it to customers. It's going to be a lot more intuitive, which is awesome.
No, that's very good. Yeah, I recommend everybody go back through. Paige did a really good job. I think we've done a couple sessions now on App Defense. We'll probably do one again here now with once the update goes live. Um,
Yeah.
so how again? How's that going in that space? So we're getting some uptake in that space. Definitely getting some more customers and some bigger customers on there. We don't want to mention names per se, but did you see an uptick because of the platinum?
Yeah. So, like a little fun fact, I was on my honeymoon in over the Christmas and then New Year's holiday. And when I was out, I decided to really like not look or bring my laptop. And I came back to like 600 or 700 emails. and most of them were deals that had booked for Platinum. So Platinum was extremely popular, or is extremely popular. So we're seeing a huge amount of increase in customers on that.
No, just thinking about that. So there may be some people that aren't familiar with the Platinum. Do you want to maybe give a quick blurb on what Platinum is when we're talking about it here?
Yeah, so Platinum essentially is a vCenter plugin option. So you'll get AppDefense and you get the SaaS version for free for 1 year, which means you have the AppDefense console. But in addition to that, if you upgrade to 6.7 U1, I think it is, you get the AppDefense plugin, which essentially means from vCenter, it'll give you process reputation and stuff like that already in your vCenter. So if you eventually want to go to only an online mode, which doesn't include the SaaS dashboard, that's where those features would kind of play in. And the increase of also in every release, they're increasing the functionality in the plugin too. So that's a big strategic move also with App Defense and VMware, because there's some customers who just don't want to mess with the SaaS world.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Is so this comes up not necessarily for me anyway in the vSphere Platinum or App Defense world, but we get a lot of confusion around that around network insight in particular. So we get a lot of customers that say, okay, well I got VNRI on prem, but
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about this network insight thing. What's the difference? And really, there is no difference in the VNRI world for between our SaaS offering and the on-premise. It's just a matter of how you pay it and whose onus it is to maintain some of those pieces. Now, in the app defense world, there is currently a difference between those two products, right? There's some
Yeah,
features.
yeah, there's a total difference. So some of the when I actually talked about reputation, some of the in built-in functionality that will identify malicious processes and stuff can't come to the only on-prem mode, because that would mean you need to contact our cloud database to sort of get that functionality. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, everybody knows there's a need for a certain type of customer to not have internet access inside certain applications, in which case we're trying to come to support that from an app defense perspective as well.
Yeah, I guess in that world it would make a lot more sense. Well, I mean, I guess in the network insight world, and just to be clear to everybody, and I don't want to speak for you, Paige, maybe you can clarify this, but I know for the rest of our SaaS products, where they have a counterpart on prem, the roadmap is to kind of merge these into being feature parity between the SaaS and the on prem, and the only difference would be how you consume and pay for it. Is
Yeah,
that
and I'm not sure actually about if we would have exact feature parity, because I just think there's some things that can only be available in SaaS. But I think, like, hopefully to get to that stage, it'll take a while, just because the SaaS version is much further along than the on-prem. Um, so maybe in the far future, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that is sort of shaped. And a lot of it's due to the customers that we're dealing with right now. SaaS is a much more popular option currently, but we'll just have to see as the on-prem develops, like where our customers are going to lead us to.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that the app defense is kind of, it's kind of an interesting product, really, in my opinion, to be SaaS started. I mean, I get the online database part, but yeah, traditionally, and I guess it's changing that paradigm entirely. Is traditionally when you think of security, you think of on-prem, you think of agents on, machines and stuff like that. So it's probably even a little bit harder of a mindset shift for consumers of that service.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I think, like, traditionally VMware goes after sort of, or is most comfortable talking to the VMware infrastructure person or VMware admin. In this case, we're really trying to shift that to a security based team, which is different for our company too. But yeah, I think I think the SaaS sets us up to integrate with other products like VMC really nicely in the future too.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. I think we see a lot of, you know, push towards products working with VMC, more SaaS model, more on demand. Again, I know it was back in the days when I was an administrator, which is I guess long ago now. That if I didn't have to be the guy that had to make sure that all the updates were there and the sizings were right, that would have been great for me, right? So the same with like VNRI or other cloud offerings where we kind of take on the onus like cloud assembly. I spent probably a good 2-3 years at VMware, uh, kind of teaching expert to expert training on installing and configuring VRA, and it was not easy. It's gotten a lot easier now. Everybody can admit that. But if I could have just pushed that problem about sizing and configuration and updates and all that maintenance onto the SaaS version, I would have jumped all over that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that the cloud assembly and like I said, even AppDefense and all those other SaaS services, to me, like I said, as the administrator, are amazing. But I do understand that it's a different world, a different way of thinking of things, and we're constantly evolving the products. In some cases, some of our products are somewhat basic in some of the feature sets, but they're getting there. We're kind of smart, starting small and get what works, and we keep expanding our services. So along those lines, so I know that VMC kind of takes a quarterly approach to updating services. Is App Defense World kind of the same, or is it just kind of free flowing?
It's like, yeah, it must be quarterly because it's every 3 months, just about.
Well, that would be a quarter of a year, Paige.
Yeah,
Just to,
that's right.
just to put it out there. Um,
Math is fun.
yeah, math is fun. There's a fraction in there somewhere, I'm sure. That
Yeah, so yeah, it's quarterly. So we had the major one with platinum, and then this is our minor release, and then the next one will be another major one. So it's pretty cool. I was in some of those meetings yesterday, and I just get so excited seeing how much we're able to do in these 3 month periods too.
Yeah, no, it is quite incredible, and I've talked about this several times. I talked about this in the VMUG chats I do, and I did a VLZ a couple weeks ago about everybody is, again, this is kind of dating me in the terms of the VMware world, but back in the early days, every other VM world was a major release. I guess it was maybe every VM world had a major release, but everything was kind of a cadence then. So when you're waiting for vSphere 4, that was a VM world time, and then 4 or 5, or the 5 was going to be 2 years after that. But now with the SaaS world, it's like updates are just now, 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 now,
Yeah,
now.
so regular. Yeah.
Because in theory, technically, when you look at our vSphere version within VMware Cloud, it's actually 6.8 something now. So it's actually kind of a version ahead of on-prem, and that'll continue to drive as we see the features and the feature sets required for our customers. But I find a lot of, in some cases, a lot of the industry and a lot of the customers are kind of still thinking in that old mindset of they're waiting for VMworld for the next greatest announcement or for the next big product push, whereas that could come in our case, in February,
Yeah.
which is something that, not everybody was kind of used to. And do you guys have a roadmap page or anything like that?
I gotta find one actually. I mean, I think I am like a dangerous person to be talking out here because I am so entrenched in the business unit that sometimes I don't realize, like things are forward looking statements. So most
So
of
so
those,
here to here, if you want to ask the hard questions and get some inside information, here's your
yeah,
opportunity.
everything is forward looking. Who knows? So I need to get one, but I was actually just thinking what might be interesting is if we go through the products that our team covers before VMworld on one of these sessions and just highlight the major releases that we had over the year. That'd be kind of cool to just like see the year in reverse.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll probably do that. I mean, it's odd that we're already starting to kind of think of VMworld.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
planning for VMworld for us on the AppDefense side started like the week I got back from vacation. So it's been
well, I guess we do start selling tickets here. The early bird starts sometime relatively soon. I guess we're about 6 months out.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm kind of short sighted. So we have an internal conference coming up that a lot of us are going to called Tech Summit, which is a VMware internal thing where we go through a lot of content there. Tech Summit used to actually align with VMworld, but
Oh really?
yeah, it used to be the week before.
Oh, that's
Uh,
a lot.
yeah, it made for a rough couple weeks, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Uh, so we changed that now, but and I think it's good that we spread this stuff out because again, because of this pace of change. But I do really like that idea of before VMworld. While we go into the big announcements, it's like okay, look at all the stuff that we did last year, and I think it would probably be pretty incredible when we.
Yeah, and I've actually tried to do that more with the team I'm working with too, because we get so focused on the next thing. And if we lose one feature because we don't have time to put it in there, it's like such a disappointment. But then when you look back, all of the features that have been added are, it's a crazy amount. So I think it's always good to just do that. And especially since we are showing, like the model is changing for VMware with SaaS, especially. We don't have a once a year major release. All of these things have changed dramatically over the last year. And then, of course, VMworld, we have some good releases as well, but I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'll have to put that in the schedule, and as well for anybody listening in chat and they're watching this later on. We do have an email address, lisacloudcs@vmware.com, where you can ask questions or submit ideas. Just like to, Paige is a great idea there, or something you want to see, or some content we could definitely cover. We're always looking for topics. We usually have another end of content because of the fast pace of change, but especially for these office hours, we like to try to keep them as interactive as possible. So the more interactivity, the more better it is for the consumer, I think. But um, I do like that. We had last week we went over site recovery service, and now that so there's been some kind of organization changes on the VMware side, which is kind of irrelevant for customers, but we've moved into kind of more of the sales organization, albeit customer success is still customer success. I don't want to confuse that, but seeing as I wanted to put my sales hat on for a second, we are having the site recovery. There is a deal coming up here in February for anybody that's looking at that service. Where I think I can't remember the exact specifics, but if you're looking at that service now, would be the time to start delving into it more. We did a session on it last week. We actually have a partner faction coming on next week to discuss their offering that kind of works in tandem or in parallel to what we offer for the site recovery service. And so that's something I just wanted to pitch out there to do my due sales diligence, even though I don't make any commission. But like I said, yeah, the pace of change is fast. On the VMware Cloud side, we're coming up on our next M release, although I think we're going away from the M term here soon. Just for anybody that's kind of familiar with how we do our milestones, I think we're changing some of the verbiage there, but the principle is the same. But M6 is coming here within the next month. All of our stuff is available on the roadmap page. And so I highly recommend kind of people looking there for any of the kind of features. Now we pretty much everything's on the roadmap, but there is the odd kind of thing that we keep internally just because we're working on it. But M6's got a lot of stuff. We're just finishing up our M5 P2, which is changing out the host types that we have. We all are working on also the NSXV to NSXT migration, as NSXT is going to be kind of the networking solution of choice going forward. Now, does that have any complexities or any enhancements with AppDefense, Paige?
So it's not supported yet by AppDefense.
Maybe I
We are
shouldn't ask that question then. for anybody wondering if we do this live, and we're completely honest here, so now you can tell.
But that's coming. So I think for customers now who have NSXV, what they see with AppDefense is when they come to the remediation action point where they want to, sort of put a rule or a standard on if a process or IP is being hit that they don't want, they can actually quarantine a VM. And then we have custom policies too through Service Composer in NSX where they can sort of get more granular than they could with AppDefense today on creating remediation actions. T it is being worked on, but I think that's where a lot of some of the enhancements in the product, they're basing it off the T model. So,
Which is good, and like I said, we're, and we are working on. So one of the key principles that we're working on really hard going forward, and this is something that we unfortunately had a little bit of. Like when we're developing as fast as we are and the products that we are, sometimes things get a little out of sync, with the AppDefense and T, and there were some other solutions that didn't work. But one of the guiding principles that I've kind of really worked on, and I have weekly meetings with the engineering team, is to ensure that whenever we're introducing features, that it works with the existing features. That is a very, very core tenet of what we would like to offer. And like I said, just because of the pace of change and some of the upstarts of AppDefense is kind of new into there, and some of the other solutions. But going forward, we're definitely working extremely hard on ensuring when we update it at version to T, or we do something else in the update stack that works with all of the products, or we have some kind of workaround at the very least to maintain functionality. But yeah, that the pace of change is extremely quick, and it's kind of funny to me that we do have a lot of familiarity with NSXV principles out there, and NSXT, from a usability standpoint, I'm trying to figure out if that's the right verbiage for that, is not that much different to T. Like your end users see nothing different, obviously. But there is some fundamental differences that I think offer some advantages to how the architecture is done, especially when it comes to VMware Cloud. And that's why we push so quickly towards it, especially around Direct Connect, because we have most of our customers now. All of our big customers and most of our other customers are using Direct Connect, and there's definitely some big functionality that is brought to the table when we go to NSXT over V in that space. And one of the other things I'd like to touch upon, and this has nothing to do with Paige, so I apologize if I'm boring you, Paige, but
no, that's okay.
One of the announcements that came in November, we talked about a little bit about a month or two ago, was a transit gateway that Amazon came out with, and there's been some myriads of statements around the supportability of it, and then there is a blog up there about how we work with it and stuff like that. But so the transit gateway and NSXT, they do work together, essentially only as the transit gateway being a VPN endpoint. There is more functionality coming with NSXV. It does work with the transit gateway, but there's a lot more complexity around it. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there, because there has been this kind of message that VMC and the transit gateway are fully supported together, and they are, but there's some functionality stuff that is we're still kind of working through, and then we're looking to add some enhancements to it as we go forward. So we're really very closely tied to Amazon in at least our space, in the VMware Cloud space, obviously. So when they release something, sometimes it takes a little bit of a lag time for us to adopt it, and vice versa. So I just wanted to touch upon that, because that's kind of been a hot topic as of late, as there have been some communications from AWS that it's all supported. And again, not to split hairs, it is, but there's some fun. I wouldn't say necessarily fun, but there is some considerations around how to use that. Now, again, another loaded question, just because I have you here, Paige, and I'm curious about it, is there any tie-ins or support for App Defense to AWS right now, or coming, or like for EC2 workloads, or?
Not right now. And actually, I don't know that we've even started talking about that because we're so focused on having VMware Cloud be our first tie-in. But I think then from there, there's tons of possibilities, which is what I'm really excited to get into when the BUs can build it into the roadmap. Is we're going to get a lot of feedback like we did in the early days of App Defense of what customers want to see and how it's going to progress from a VMC App Defense standpoint. So that's like pretty exciting. And we're hoping to have that hopefully sometime this year, as in 2019, to start that. So that's going to be really cool, especially because we have a lot of current customers too who want both or actually have both and would love to tie them in together.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And yeah, I mean, it's an interesting world. Like like I said, we are quite tied to Amazon now. I haven't actually personally seen, and I'd like to get some feedback from anybody again that's watching live or watching this recording. One, if that is of interest, Paige mentioned that there are customers out there, but the more that we have that say that this is a feature that they want, that the more credence and the higher priority these things become. So definitely, speak up if that's an interest. But I haven't actually seen altogether that large an amount of some of our integrations with Amazon. I have seen some. We have done a lot of transit VPC type architectures, which is kind of an AWS construct to talk to other AWS resources, and particularly EC2. But I'd really like to kind of see, I guess, more of that integration happening. Now, obviously, I understand, we got to design for our product first, but um, it's just kind of curious as to me is our customers still quite look at, and I touch upon this in our VMUG because I know I'm kind of rambling and I apologize, but that we have really developed cloud silos now. Before we had the network silo and the storage silo and the server silo within an organization. Now we have the VMware silo, the Azure silo, and the AWS silo, and a big part of our job for our team is actually working with all of these different silos to figure out who's doing what and where the resources are best allocated and how they can manage it all together. So I know as a VMware vision, we're really working and striving hard, and we do have quite a few products now that do extend across clouds. Cloud Assembly is one, NSX Cloud being another. HCX does work across clouds, but that's the enterprise version as opposed to the bundled version. But it's just kind of curious to me that we always seem to kind of, wall off our village, as it were, and not really try to extend by it. And it's just kind of funny that we've kind of broken down that on-prem boundary between the storage teams and the network teams with a lot of our products, but now specifically in my job, it's okay. Now I got to talk to the AWS guys and then kind of explain to them how the VMware cloud world works and how we can work together. And it's slowly starting to key in, but everybody does definitely seem to like to keep to their own little area. Um, and I guess in the security world for you, Peter, that's probably even more so, as a lot of security analysis is done on a per cloud or per prem basis as opposed to a holistic type of look at things.
Yeah, I think so. And I think because a lot of people or a lot of companies use different standards, so it's hard to sort of adjust to native AWS from something that we built off of VMware infrastructure.
That's
So
actually
once,
there's actually a funny comment, and I'd like to get your impression on this too, because quite often I get a question, and I'm sure you do too, is, well, how is everybody else doing this?
yeah, yeah, that's true. I think, like I mentioned before, we have so many, or we know so many customers that are just so comfortable with VMware, um, you know, infrastructure and just having built their whole careers on it as, VMware admins. So I think most of the customers I work with are deeply entrenched with VMware and love that we're expanding into the security standpoint. So from the customers that I've worked with, not a lot of questions. But then when we have outside customers who maybe aren't as familiar with VMware, they're very interested in what App Defense would bring from that standpoint too.
Yeah, and like, we get that from the perspective of the AWS admins going, well, hold on, so what can I do with this now?
Yeah.
And or
Yeah.
how does this work with my stuff? And we have, like I said, we have very good, very good stories around that. But to the question was is uh, every customer is especially I think in the security space, and we're seeing it in the cloud space, has very unique requirements for what they're doing and what they're offering. So when I get that question, I know that I usually kind of struggle with it a little bit of especially when they say, well, how is everybody else doing this transit gateway architecture? How is everybody else connecting these together? And it's like, well, it's it's really dependent on you. Um, and that's why in the VMbug talks and the stuff that I do, and then some of the recordings that everybody can watch is like as I go over a lot of the thought considerations going into it to get it right, because there is a lot of thinking that needs to go in this, and there isn't a standardized template I think I could give anybody that says, this is how people usually connect to the service. Now, once the service is up and running and stuff like that, there is definitely a lot more guidance. We can give a lot of guidance around the configurations because we've seen quite a few. But um, it's kind of it's interesting to me that in the cloud world, where you kind of make this assumption, or in the SaaS world where people just consume the service as you offer it, that's not necessarily true. They still bring a lot of the baggage with them per se to try to make it work in on-prem terms as opposed to new SaaS world conventions. And I think probably in the security world, that's probably going to be one of the last bastions of on-prem thinking is I have to own everything for this to be secure.
Yeah, and maybe I took your question the wrong way. Definitely every new customer I get says, well, how does everybody else set this up, or what do they look at in terms of um, alarms that come in? It's highly specific to each environment, so that's kind of an interesting standpoint. I mean, there are best practices and stuff that we've learned along the way in terms of how certain types of customers set up, but
Yeah,
yeah.
and we tried to really hard, and this is something that we've talked about in our group 1,000 times about. I'm not a massive fan of the term best practice. And we just toss around the terms of like architectural guidance or architectural recommendations, and it's really just a semantics game over around the same thing. Now, in the app defense world, and it's same as in our world, I guess as well, is that there are, I don't know if I call it a best practice, but perhaps kind of a default or a baseline might be a better kind of way of deeming it. Of this is kind of the common denominator that most customers do, and then from there they kind of they go their own ways. But just as an interesting conversation point, I mean, is that the way the best way to operate, I guess? Or I mean, I understand everybody's got their own business requirements and their own constraints and stuff, but I do feel that there needs to be a little bit of a change in thinking of, as opposed to making everything so unique to me that it becomes difficult to manage or to scale or um, to leverage all of the other services, to kind of adopting more of a this is what's offered and maybe I should look at adopting that as opposed to vice versa. You kind of get what I'm saying there. I know it's kind of
Yeah, no, and I think I agree with that because so many times, we'll set stuff up, and when we go to the behavior verification, that is highly specific to each customer, especially if they have their own homegrown applications. So when we get to that point, they customers are always like, okay, like what does this mean? And I'm like, this is very specific to your environment. And so you kind of need to know what this means. Or if you don't now, like this is a good opportunity for you to understand, like, this is what your application is doing. and make sure that it's doing the correct thing and what you built it for. So
Yeah, no,
that,
and I think that app defense and to a degree, I think app defense and coupled with like network insight
mhm.
or Verni on prem is giving customers a really big pause of thinking,
Oh
like you
yeah.
said, like. And I mean, I've always made that comment and being slightly facetious about it, but it's very true that a lot of people don't actually know what their servers are talking to and what they're doing.
Yeah, and a lot of times if they have NSX already, it'll change their policies. Just from what they see in App Defense, they'll decide to change policies. Or if they don't have NSX and they're thinking about it, they set up their NSX based off of what they've viewed in App Defense. So it gives you another level of visibility that you've never had before. And like, yeah, so I would say Network Insight gives you a higher view, and it has really good diagrams too of how the network flow is going. But for App Defense, it gives you very, very specific details on every process, every IP, like every CLI that's run in each VM.
Well, and I think that there is potentially a fantastic synergy here between the products because you get network insight, and all of a sudden you say, well, why is your app server talking to this other server?
Yeah.
And the app guys sometimes know if the app guys are still around. But then with app defense, then you can actually go in and say, okay, well, it's talking this process on this port. Should it be? And again, back to your point, that's kind of where some of the stuff becomes unique to customers because I mean, you can't answer that question about whether or not this app should be talking to that server or not. But we're bubbling up so much of that. Like I have seen that all the time now, and especially doing migrations where it's like, oh, I had no idea that this server was talking to that server. Um,
Yeah,
and
exactly. And then from there, you can see what process is actually talking to that server, and what CLI was run, or were there multiple CLIs run, or what IPs were being hit, and etc. So it's very detailed.
no, and I think that and then again then that offers a synergy back into NSX or whatever firewall technology or whatever networking technology you're running to then say, okay, well, then this does need to talk to that.
Yeah,
So I got to
exactly.
make sure that my policies are in line with that because as customers move to VMware Cloud, it's a fundamental change in thinking because we go with kind of the zero trust model of everything's denied, whereas I don't know of many on-prems that are like that. Usually, it's the other way around, where it's okay. We'll let everything up, and then we'll start to lock it down, which is kind of the same as in app defenses, where you know most security products are like, okay, I know all of the bad stuff or most of the bad stuff, so I'll try to block the bad stuff, but God knows what other stuff is out there that I don't know is necessarily bad, and so it's kind of that fundamental change to a zero trust model of I'm only going to allow what I know is good.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and the only but when that world happens, that's hard, right? I mean that's and I'm sure you experienced that. Is it probably give some examples of there's probably customers you have where they're like I have no idea what all of these processes running are.
Yeah, exactly. Like we run into that very, I mean, it's a good practice though, I think, for companies who are really like, we want to implement a zero trust, especially on this application, for you to do the due diligence to really look through everything it's doing to ensure that the zero trust model that you're putting in place is correct. I think it makes you a lot more knowledgeable and able to spot something that's going wrong too. So it takes a little while. Like App Defense gives you a lot of information and then helps you as far as it can in terms of these are what we're seeing. This has a high reputation or a low trust score based off of what we're seeing, and then letting this process talking to this IP is a very low likelihood of something good happening. But in the end, the customer needs to decide if that's something they want to allow. Um, which I think it's just a good process to walk through And in the onboarding phases, I love jumping in and helping with that too, just based off of like, well, it's like going through, I feel like it's like going through your closet and getting rid of a lot of clothes that you've had for forever that you really don't need in there. And then it just is a cleaner space, easier to spot something that
Yeah, no, it's funny because we find a lot of that too in terms of like the migration and and I guess you probably see even more of it where it's like, oh, I had no idea that this app was still running. We tried to kill that off 2 years ago, um, or stuff like that. The visibility I think that this is offered again as an administrator, years ago, I would have killed for being able to actually take a look at something like AppDefense and say, okay, these are the processes that are running on this server. They are talking to that. Can you please tell me what these are, as opposed to going the opposite direction to the app guys and say, okay, what do you need? And then you seal everything off and everything breaks, and you're like, okay, thanks. And then somehow it became my fault. But so I think the world of visibility that we're giving and that level of control, like you talked about, is really it's securing things in one aspect and making it more secure, but also ensuring that functionality is retained.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so true when you are like, this has been running for 2 years. I mean, that happens literally like every day with me. Um, it'll be, oh, we did a POC 2 years ago, and I guess we never uninstalled this process from running. So it's like, okay, well, let's get rid of that now, and then you could go clean that up too.
Yeah, no, and another thing that I think is would be a good pitch now is so currently Paige assists. I would say probably every app defense customer now. You and your team.
Not every, actually. We're getting to the point where it's either a sales nominated customer or some of our higher, more complex customers. So our team doesn't, unfortunately, is not able to touch every customer. But now that we have chat installed in App Defense too, there's a way for customers to communicate with a member of our team or our extended support team too if they need help.
So something good to touch upon is I don't know if that was available when we talked about this last.
Yeah,
That the chat
chat
function was
available
there.
now. Everybody use chat. It's the best. I'm in there. I have a teammate who just joined me who's in there, and then the extended support team, and then some of the product managers are hanging around there too. So any questions that you have, just shoot it over in chat.
So I mean that's a good chance. So the teammate that you had, it was somebody that we've actually had on our pod our webinars here in our office hours as well was Eric Huber who
Yes.
did our hybrid link mode and cloud gateway discussion a few months ago, which is something I highly recommend people watching as well. But so very highly capable guy that has joined Page, and the reason I guess I kind of brought up now is if you really want to get into app defense, you're cool. Now is the time because there is more likelihood you're going to get somebody like Paige or Eric to assist directly with you, as because as you say, as we scale, it's not like our service will drop, but um, you're not perhaps going to get the Paige or the Eric on it. It's impetus. The faster you get on, the more likelihood you're going to get the what we kind of call the white glove service.
We
Um,
also look for, so like very active customers in chat who have feedback. That if you are, if you're a VMware junkie and you love the technology and some of the newer technologies come out and you start using App Defense and you have a ton of feedback on it, we're absolutely loving to hear that. That's one of the customer success main function is to, bring back to the BU the direct feedback from customers. So that's another way to get our attention.
Yeah,
Um,
and
and
I would recommend everybody that's again watching this to email our cloudcs@vmware.com. If they have that, we can make sure that we get that to Paige, who will get
yeah,
that
or even
feedback.
put it in the chat feature if you start using App Defense.
Or yeah, the chat feature. And again, I am such a massive fan of our chat feature, and I find that a lot of people, and I've talked about this before several times, but I'll bring it up here again. Is a lot of people are apprehensive of the chat feature because they're used to other companies or other products chat features which are not so good or whatever have you. Ours is phenomenal. Like I said, You'll get Paige, you'll get Eric, you'll get somebody else from our CSE team. These are people that are responsible directly for the functioning of the service. This isn't kind of like a level one service desk somewhere. This is people that are extremely knowledgeable about the particular product that you're in chat for. And they answer extremely fast.
I mean,
And
I even use it sometimes when I'm, if I'm working on something in my lab.
yeah, and I mean, like I'm just showing, it's just as easy as clicking just two buttons and you're kind of in there and ready to like I said, these aren't just your regular, you know, not to diminish the level one support, but these are people that are tasked specifically with this service. There's no other kind of activities that they have. Now that being said, and I don't know if this works for AppDefense. So a question to ask is, so on our side, the chat support is 24/5, aiming to be 24/7 here in the very near future. Is that also true for AppDefense?
Yeah, so they're 24/5 right now. I don't know that um, that the 7 will come into play for a little while. So it's definitely Monday through Friday. And we do have support in all regions. The only thing is for APJ, we don't necessarily have the language set up, but we can always.
Yeah, I can't understand Australians either. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's a shout out to all my Australian friends who I'll be chatting with later this afternoon. We're doing another webinar this afternoon for scheduling reasons, and Paige probably won't be there, but we'll talk with something different. But just a joke for the Aussies. But so I know on our side we're working for the 24/7 rapidly. Now, the other question I had to that is that so on our side of the house, you could still open a traditional ticket if you still wanted to go in and do an email or call somebody on the phone. You could do it that way if you really wanted to. Is that available for AppDefense as well, or is it all
Yes,
chat?
but I have to stress, just like you did, it's so much easier to use the chat feature because it's the same way that you go through the My VMware portal. So one, you don't have to go through that portal. Two, we can, or the backend team can create a case based on that. If it is a critical issue, then in most cases, actually, you do get a Zoom session or something like a WebEx set up just right there. So it's much, much more convenient. But yeah, you can do the traditional call in or my VMware ticket also.
And another point that I kind of wanted to touch upon briefly was something that comes up often is well, if I use chat, is there still a ticket generated I can track later? And absolutely yes. So when they initiate these chats, an SR is also open to service requests on our end. So if you come back later, you can we can give you that service number or whatever and say, hey, I was talking to somebody about this and here's the service. So there is still that trackability. It's not like it's just a nebulous chat that disappears when you guys leave. And for us, and again, Paige echoes this. The chat feature is great, is because so say you're a customer, you come in and you say, you know what, I'm having really problems with this, and I'm trying to get this configured, and you're talking with chat, and chat says, okay, hey, I'm gonna grab Paige because Paige knows this stuff. And Paige comes. Paige can actually, or if it's VMC and they grab me, and we can actually review that chat and get caught up on it, as opposed to having to ask you all the same questions again, which is a really kind of a nice function and feature from us on our side, is being able to kind of take a look at that conversation and see what's been done and what's been tried, so we don't have to ask you those questions again. So again, I know we're harping on it, but the chat feature is really, really cool. It's really the fastest way of doing things. If you and I saw you heard Paige talk about all the emails she gets. I don't get quite that degree of email, but you email me. I'll probably get back to you relatively soon, but nowhere near as soon as you can get an answer via the chat function.
Yeah, it's like, I love this whole movement to like Slack and stuff like that. It's just so much more immediate.
Well, that being said, I think I got sent some invite for Microsoft Teams, and anyway. um, for the most part, we've moved to Slack, which I love. Because it does enable this collaboration, and we do have some functionalities between Slack and our chat engines and all these other things where we can quickly review what's going on and keep an eye on things and make sure our customers are happy. And that's what our job is at customer success, is really to make sure that customers are successful. So we got about 10 minutes left. The floor is open, as always, for questions if anybody's out there and wants some more clarification. Like I said, I'm actually going to be doing another webinar here at 6 o'clock tonight PST. I think Z said he's going to join me. So one of the things I might talk about a little bit later today was maybe some of the Direct Connect stuff. We do have a lot of customers that are configuring Direct Connects, and there's some confusion around it because there's multiple AWS accounts and stuff. So we'll probably discuss that later, which is kind of a heads up to Z as well if he's listening. That's probably where we're going to go with that conversation. Like I said, next week at 8 a.m. we have one of our partners coming on, Faction, which has a really cool offering that they have built on top of VMware Cloud. And I was a very, very big fan and a very big proponent of all of the partners that we have and the partner space, and I understand how much work they do for our customers and would really like to do that. So again, if you're listening and you're a partner and you have an offering that works on VMware Cloud, reach out to me. You can on cloudcs@vmware.com or at VMwareCloudMat on Twitter, and we can put together a session for you to highlight your stuff. Again, I apologize to everybody for the last couple weeks. Our schedule's been a little bit out of whack coming back from the new year. Hopefully we fixed that up, and we should be back on the cadence of 2 sessions at the 8 a.m. PST time and 2 sessions then at the 6 p.m. to get that global reach. I'd definitely like to have Paige on here again. You said features coming in about a week, so maybe I can put you down for 6 p.m. podcasts for, I guess it would be a month from now.
Well,
3 weeks.
It
3
would
weeks.
be. What's today? Oh my gosh, is it February already next week?
No, it is soon. Not quite yet. Don't get ahead of yourself. I don't know where January went.
I think the 12th might work, or the 19th, whenever.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably the 19th is when I'll probably look at getting you on. So for those watching and keen on App Defense, we'll go over the new dashboard with Paige then, which is always nice to have. It's always nice to have Paige around. She's always willing to jump up and just kind of converse, which is fantastic. Which I do appreciate, Paige, by the way.
Yeah, I need to get onto like a talk show, just become a constant talker.
I know. I think it was not last week, the week before. I think I was the only one on, and for all those that kind of watch Twitch more than I, streaming and these kind of talk show things, it's actually a lot harder than it looks. And I'm not trying to go for pity or whatever, but it's actually kind of tough to just talk to yourself for an hour. It's a lot easier.
No feedback, it's tough.
Yeah, it's a much easier when you get some interactivity, or especially someone to join you in the chat where you can kind of just ramble stuff off, and I think it makes it probably a lot more entertaining as well. But there is definitely a skill to it, and I'm not sure if I've mastered it yet, but this is now, I believe, our 20th week in a row. The other update I wanted to kind of give you, and I briefly mentioned it, is we do have some internal conferences coming up. So I will probably be missing some of the webinars here coming up shortly. I will find somebody to host them in my stead. It might be Dustin, who I'm sure many people are familiar with. He's run some of the webcasts before, or anybody else on my team that's looking at doing them, but I just want to give that up. I am also going on PTO February 15th, so I might not make your session, I guess. I'll have to find if Dustin's going to be available. Going on a family vacation to the Netherlands, which I'm actually looking extremely forward to.
Cool.
And then I got back-to-back conferences the weeks after that, so I won't be home for like 3 weeks straight, but that's my own damn fault. So
maybe Eric and I can host for you that week.
Could be. Actually, that's a great idea. We'll take that offline and I can go through the setup for all these kinds of things, but I think that would be a fantastic idea. As I mentioned before, all of these videos do go up on YouTube. Like I said, we're 16 followers away from our own link, which I can give you. That's a lot easier for the sake of this. It is on the Twitch page at the bottom. I do tweet it out every week when I upload the videos as well, so you can go back and get a more in-depth look at App Defense. So like I said, we've done a couple different sessions with Paige on AppDefense, but maybe check out the latest one if you just kind of want to take an overview of it. If you want to get familiar with Eric, his Cloud Gateway one, I think, is the second most viewed video we have. I think number one is still HCX video, which we'll probably do some more HCX content coming here soon, as there's some pretty cool updates coming into that space. But yeah, Paige, any closing remarks?
Always fun, Matt.
I do appreciate you coming out. I hope everybody kind of enjoyed some of the app defense talk here. I know it is a very popular product for people to think about. I know our executive, like Pat, talks about it on stage all the time. So it's always good to just kind of have these little chit chats. And like I said to everybody, the more interactive, the better. If you have questions, watching this recording, again, email us, tweet at us, any show suggestions. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Even feedback would be great, whether or not this is of value, listening to Paige and I banter back and forth of our thoughts of the SaaS industry, or how far off we are in our thoughts and assessments, is also valuable. But with that, I think, without any other comments, I will be, like I said, on later tonight at 6:00, and if people feel the need to come back. But I appreciate everybody for coming out and watching the videos and spending their time with us. And I will see some of you later and see more of you next week. Thanks.
Thank you.